coronavirus timeline. This is going to be about the coronavirus timeline, and we had a distinguished author here yesterday saying what you need to do is lay out a coronavirus timeline so everybody can follow all the stories that are circulating around coronavirus. So that's what we're going to do. But first, we're going to go all the way back to Frank Plummer and Dr. K and Dr. Q in Winnipeg. So we're going to cover that. But first, I want to give people an idea of why I said Mattia Benassi or Matt Benassi, who both went to the Wuhan Games, were patient zero, and why I think Mattia was patient zero. Remember, the Chinese government believes it's the athletes, the 300 athletes. We looked at NATO, her relationship to the four-star general. But we remember on our channel, we've been following Fort Detrick, going all the way back to transport logistics for chems, nukes, and biodiversion. So we've been following that. We've been following the use of these NATO Blackberries. We've been following Peter Strzok for 3 years. And we've been looking at, Task Force and I went up to Bethesda Hospital, Naval Hospital, many times, if you remember. We looked at the FDA there, we looked at the NIH, we looked at people who had infiltrated those organizations there around different coding products those companies used. So we've done a lot of background on Bethesda Hospital. Well, if you look and see who they're, first of all, you have to, you probably are aware of the World Health Organization. You probably are aware of this guy who's Ethiopian now, who's running the World Health Organization, who said how virulent the strain was and caused a little upset with Trump. So it's this, we'll just call him President E for Ethiopia right now. We don't have to worry about his name, but Dr. E is the one from World Health Organization that talked about the virulence of this strain, and I believe he's right if you consider all 5 groups of the strain. So the WHO has these centers called WHO collaboration centers. So they're WHO collaboration centers, and they're basically like task forces, much like we have Task Force Orange, where you bring Navy guys, Army guys, Special Forces folks, FBI like Peter Strzok. DTRA would be a classic example, the people that move these chems and nukes. Defense Threat Reduction Agency is a perfect example of people coming from all different angles of a problem to form a task force. Okay, part of the reason we called task force, and she was studying this. Okay, so if you look at these World Health Organization collaboration centers, there's very few of them in the United States, and they're built around where our current biology safety lab 4s are built. So the BSL 4s. BSL 4s, one of them is in Winnipeg for Canada. There's 7 in the US. But there's only 3, I believe, WHO collaboration centers. So in any kind of outbreak where a bioweapon may be involved, you would typically go to the BSL 4 level places, Fort Detrick, Galveston, Texas, Fort Collins, Colorado, etc. But if you really wanted to see where an international group may have met in planning a bioweapon deployment, it would be in these OCCs, collaboration centers. So we're talking about 7 or 8 of these BSL-4s, the biosafety level 4, where these viruses are kept, the most secure facilities. Remember, Fort Detrick closes in August of 2019. We'll get to that. So if you look at those 3 centers, Bethesda, Galveston, and Fort Collins, the WHO, the ones we've really focused on, Task Force and I focused on, was Bethesda. That's where we went all the time. That's where we were doing all the research on infiltration, etc. Now, if you look who is on the WHO CC, you'll find A, not Mattia, but A, Benassi. Now, it just strikes me, now the reason why we've held this back is we didn't know if it was Matt Benassi or Mattia Benassi, husband and wife, both in the military, both at Fort Belvoir. She works at Fort Belvoir Community Hospital. So that is not just 2 cyclists from the armed forces going to the Wuhan Games, but we're talking about the WHO CC. okay? Now that's one of 3 military deployment centers and reaction centers to virus outbreak. Specifically, the Bethesda location is for virus deployment and outbreak and response. So here we have Abernathy, I believe it's Mott, not Matya, but we know that he's on the bioweapons deployment task force at that site. Now that's would be the key thing. Remember, there's an event 201 that happens that's launched, and it's about coronavirus the same day the military games are launched. So this event 201's launched in New York the same day the opening ceremonies in Wuhan, the military games. Okay, so this certainly would have been on the mind of anybody at that center. And if you, either Abernathy or Matya, was in those meetings at WHO CCC, they would have gone to Wuhan with that knowledge in mind. They would have gone to Wuhan with the knowledge that there was a bio attack possible. Okay, remember, this is the group, the WHO CCC, that would have planned the input, and there was several people there from that collaboration group at the event at event 201. So those people, either Mott or Matya, husband and wife team, both Army officers, both at Fort Belvoir where we had an outbreak, both going to Wuhan from the WHOCC. That's huge. That's not just a cyclist who feels out of breath and weak and is leading the first two laps of a race and then collapses from exhaustion on the 3rd lap when she's leading and gets hospitalized in Wuhan. That's not just coincidence. She's on the virus, she or Mott is on the virus outbreak team at Bethesda. There was a whole bunch of stories and mistakenly connecting Winnipeg directly with Wuhan. And those stories have been knocked down now. And for the exact reason we talked about at Fort Detrick, you can't just take 22 vials, these doctors, and fly to the fish market in Wuhan and dump the vials on shrimp at the fish market and have a full worldwide deployment of the virus. That's not how you vector a virus. That affects a very few people going to the games. Some people would get hospitalized and it would be very localized to Wuhan. In order to maximize your deployment, you have to what's called vector the virus. You have to have a storage method. You have to be able to sit on a shelf like Coca-Cola. It's got to be refrigerated. So the vials have to come down from Winnipeg, let's say from July. They're released out of their facility there, so they have the recipe, if you will. It's sort of like a Coca-Cola secret recipe. It has to be in an ice chest. If you come to Fort Detrick, what Fort Detrick does is amplify and weaponize to fully build out the deployment. They work out the vectors. So let's just say it's going to be Coke or vitamin water or some product that's going to be refrigerated, and then you have to get it over to the games. It has to be an officially sponsored product, okay? So I don't know if it's possible to do in a dry product like vaping products. We had a lot of deaths in the South, Florida and Georgia, with the vaping products. The concentration was around the CDC in Atlanta. We know Rod Rosenstein's wife, Massonier, was the first to attack Trump on this.